Our 5th anniversary night was perfect, until I woke up to an empty bed, a missing wife, and the chilling realization that my entire life had been a meticulously crafted lie. The first thing I noticed when I woke up was the cold. It was that specific kind of cold you feel when the person who's supposed to be next to you in bed isn't there. My arm was outstretched across the crisp, white hotel sheets, reaching for a space that was empty and already cool to the touch. I blinked, my eyes adjusting to the slivers of morning light forcing their way through the heavy curtains of our suite at the Grand Majestic. For a moment, I just smiled. Sarah probably went down to the gym or to grab one of those ridiculously overpriced coffees from the lobby cafe. It was our thing. A little morning indulgence after a perfect night. And last night had been perfect. It was our 5th wedding anniversary. 5 years. It felt like a lifetime and no time at all. I'd booked the best suite in the hotel, the one with the panoramic view of the city skyline. We'd had dinner at that Michelin star restaurant downtown, the one she'd been dropping hints about for months. We drank champagne that tasted like sparkling stars and talked for hours, just like we did on our first date. I remember looking at her across the table, the candlelight dancing in her eyes, and feeling this overwhelming wave of gratitude. She was beautiful, smart, funny. She was my entire world. There had been a moment, though, just a fleeting one. While I was telling a stupid story about a guy at work, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced down, and for a split second, the warm, engaged smile she'd been wearing was replaced by something else, something I couldn't quite read. Guarded, maybe? It was gone as quickly as it appeared, and she was back with me, laughing and touching my hand. I chalked it up to work stress. She'd been putting in long hours on a big project. "Just my boss," she'd said, waving it off. And I, wanting the night to remain flawless, let it go. Back in the room, everything had been a blur of romance and whispered, "I love yous." We stood on the balcony for ages, wrapped in a single hotel robe, watching the city lights glitter below like a fallen constellation. She'd rested her head on my shoulder and said, "I'm so lucky, Alex." I held her tighter, breathing in the scent of her hair. "No," I'd whispered back, "I am." Now, lying in that cold, empty bed, the memory felt like a scene from a movie I'd only half watched. I sat up, calling her name. "Sarah?" Nothing. The silence in the huge suite felt wrong, cavernous. I got up and checked the bathroom. Her toiletries were gone. Her little silk wash bag, her ridiculously expensive face creams, all of it. A small cold knot began to form in my stomach. Okay, that's weird. Why would she pack up her toiletries to go to the gym? I grabbed my phone from the nightstand to call her. No new messages, no missed calls. I hit her contact. It rang once, twice, then went straight to voicemail. "Hey, it's Sarah. Leave a message." My thumb hovered over the screen. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. The knot in my stomach tightened into a cold, hard stone of dread. This wasn't right. This wasn't her. She wouldn't just leave without a note, without a text. She wouldn't turn her phone off. My heart started hammering against my ribs. I threw on a t-shirt and jeans, my mind racing through 100 terrible scenarios. Did she get sick? Did she fall? I was about to rush out the door and tear through the hotel looking for her when my phone buzzed in my hand. It was an unknown number, a local landline. I answered it, my voice hoarse. "Hello? Good morning. Is this Mr. Evans in room 1201? The voice on the other end was professionally cheerful, a woman from the front desk. A wave of relief washed over me. Maybe Sarah had left a message with them. "Yes, this is Alex Evans. Has my wife Sarah been down there? I can't seem to reach her." There was a slight pause on the other end. "Your wife, sir?" the receptionist asked, her tone shifting from cheerful to confused. I'm not sure. I'm calling about settling the final bill for your room. I frowned. The final bill? We're not checking out until noon, and I put my card down on file when we checked in. Yes, sir, we have your card, she said. And then there was another hesitant pause, longer this time. I could hear the faint sound of keyboard clicks in the background. It's just, our system shows the room was already checked out and paid for in full very early this morning. We were just calling to confirm everything was satisfactory with the payment settled by Mr. Harrison. Mr. Harrison? The name echoed in the silent, opulent hotel room, completely alien and yet utterly destructive. For a second, my brain refused to process it. It felt like a glitch in the simulation, a line of bad code. There must be a mistake, I said, my voice sounding distant and thin. My name is Evans. We checked in together, Sarah Evans, my wife. I understand, Mr. Evans, the receptionist said, her professional sympathy sounding like nails on a chalkboard. But our records are quite clear. Room 1201 was settled at 5:17 a.m. The card used was a platinum card under the name Mark Harrison. Was my wife there? I demanded, the words catching in my throat. When this Mr. Harrison paid? Sir, I'm afraid I can't disclose information about transactions or other guests, she recited, the corporate policy a brick wall against my rising panic. I was simply calling to ensure the automatic checkout process was in order. I hung up without another word. The phone felt impossibly heavy in my hand. I stared around the suite, the rumpled sheets where we had slept, the single rose I'd left on her pillow, the half-empty bottle of champagne on the dresser. It was a crime scene. The perfect anniversary I had constructed was a lie, a stage, and I was the only one who didn't know the play was over. The pieces started slamming together in my mind with brutal force. The guarded look when her phone buzzed. The excuse, just my boss. Her toiletries being gone, her phone being off. It wasn't a spontaneous early morning workout. It was an escape. Premeditated. Coordinated. My perfect wife, the woman who'd rested her head on my shoulder just hours before and told me she was lucky, had walked out on me in the dead of night to be with someone else. A man named Mark Harrison. A hot, blinding rage I'd never felt before surged through me, chasing away the cold dread. I didn't even grab my wallet or the room key. I stormed out of the suite and jabbed the elevator button with my thumb, again and again, as if the force of my betrayal could make it arrive faster. Downstairs, the lobby was quiet, bathed in the soft, forgiving light of a new day. I spotted the receptionist from the phone call, a young woman with a neat bun and a placid smile. The sight of her calm professionalism made my blood boil. I marched to the desk. I was just on the phone with you, I said, my voice low and shaking. I need to see the security footage from the elevators and the lobby from 5 a.m. this morning. Her smile tightened. The manager, a man in a perfectly tailored suit, seemed to materialize out of thin air. Sir, is there a problem? He asked in a smooth, placating voice. My wife is missing, I bit out. And your receptionist just told me another man paid for our room and checked out. I want to see the tapes. I understand your distress, sir, the manager said, his face a mask of practiced concern. However, due to our privacy policy, we can only release security footage to law enforcement. If you'd like to file a police report, we would be more than happy to cooperate fully. Police. The word hung in the air between us. Filing a report would make it real, official. It would mean admitting that my marriage wasn't just over. It was a fraud, and I was the last one to know. Stonewalled and shaking with impotent fury, I turned away from the desk, my eyes scanning the cavernous lobby for an answer that wasn't there. Then I saw him. An older valet standing by the main doors, his posture relaxed, watching the morning traffic. He had to have seen something. I walked over, my legs feeling unsteady. Excuse me, I said, my voice cracking. I was in room 1201. My wife, Did you see a woman with dark, curly hair, maybe wearing a beige trench coat, leave very early this morning?" The valet's eyes, weathered and kind, met mine. A flicker of recognition followed by a wave of pity washed over his face. He knew. "Yes, sir. I remember her," he said quietly. "Around 5:30, I got her a taxi." My heart seized. A taxi? The receptionist said a man paid. Was she alone? He hesitated, shifting his weight. "No, sir. A gentleman was with her. He loaded her suitcase into the trunk." Suitcase. Not a gym bag, not a purse. A suitcase. The finality of that word was a physical blow. "A man," I whispered, the rage draining out of me, leaving a hollow, aching void. "Did you see what he looked like?" "Tall, dark hair, wearing a nice suit," the valet said, the description so generic it was useless. "He tipped me very well." He looked down as if embarrassed to be a witness to my life's demolition. He then looked back up at me, his brow furrowed in thought. "You know, it's funny," he said, more to himself than to me. When he was leaning into the trunk, something must have snagged on his coat pocket. It fell onto the pavement. He didn't notice. The valet reached into his own uniform pocket and pulled something out, holding it in his gloved palm for me to see. I picked it up for him, but they drove off before I could give it back. I stared down at his hand. Lying there, gleaming under the soft lobby lights, was a single silver cufflink. It was ornate, shaped like a small, intricate knot. I knew it instantly. It was from a pair I had given my best man at my wedding 5 years ago, my best friend since college, Mark Harrison. The silver cufflink in the valet's hand wasn't just metal, it was a shrapnel wound. Mark. It wasn't just an affair, a betrayal by my wife. It was a conspiracy. My best friend. The man who stood beside me clapped me on the back and gave a heartfelt speech about love and loyalty at my wedding. The whole world tilted on its axis, the polished marble floor of the Grand Majestic feeling like shifting sand beneath my feet. I numbly took the cufflink from the valet, the cold metal a stark confirmation of the nightmare I was living. I muttered a thank you and walked away, not back to the room, but out into the city, with no destination in mind. For hours, I just walked. The initial shock gave way to a cold, razor-sharp clarity. Every little thing from the past year suddenly snapped into focus. Sarah's late nights at the office, always on days when Mark was supposedly working late too. Their inside jokes that I was never quite privy to. The way they'd sometimes exchange a glance over my head at dinner parties, a glance I'd always misinterpreted as simple camaraderie. I had built my life on a foundation of lies, and I'd been too blind, too trusting to see the cracks forming all around me. I was a fool. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text, not from Sarah, but from Mark. "Hey man, you okay? Haven't heard from you. How was the anniversary night?" The casual hypocrisy of it sent a jolt of ice through my veins. He was toying with me. He wanted to hear the story of my confusion, my panic. He wanted to relish his victory. That's when the grief and the shock finally hardened into something else. Resolve. They weren't going to get away with this, not just the betrayal, but the humiliation. They thought I was a joke. I was about to write the punchline. I went home. Not to our home, the one filled with 5 years of shared memories that now felt tainted, but to my parents' old house, which had been sitting empty since they retired and moved south. It was my sanctuary, the one place that wasn't contaminated. I spent the next 2 days there, letting the initial storm of emotion pass, allowing a cold, calculated calm to settle in its place. I called a lawyer, the best divorce attorney in the city. Then I began to dig. Mark wasn't just my best friend. We were also business partners. We'd started a small tech firm together right out of college. My strengths were in development and innovation. His were in finance and networking. I'd trusted him with everything. I started pulling financial records, cross-referencing company accounts with personal expenditures, following the digital breadcrumbs he and Sarah must have thought were untraceable. What I found was worse than I could have imagined. It wasn't just a personal betrayal. For the last 18 months, Mark had been siphoning money from our company, small amounts at first, then larger and larger sums, funneling them through shell corporations into an offshore account, an account he shared with Sarah. They hadn't just stolen my wife, they had been systematically stealing my future, my life's work, piece by piece, right under my nose. The expensive dinners, the lavish weekend trips Sarah claimed were company bonuses. It was all paid for with my money. They were planning to drain the company, file for bankruptcy, and disappear together, leaving me with the wreckage of both my personal and professional lives. The checkout at the hotel was their grand finale, the final act of their long-running play. Armed with a mountain of evidence bank statements, incriminating emails I'd recovered from our shared server backups, and a sworn affidavit from the hotel valet about the cufflink, I was ready. My lawyer scheduled a meeting. It wasn't a divorce mediation. It was an ambush. We met at my lawyer's office. Mark and Sarah walked in together holding hands, their faces a mixture of smug confidence and feigned sympathy. They thought this was about me begging Sarah to come back, about a messy, emotional divorce. Sarah started with a well-rehearsed speech about how she hadn't been happy for a long time and how she and Mark had fallen for each other. Mark just stood there, his hand on her back, looking at me with that pathetic, pitying expression he'd perfected. I let them finish. Then I calmly slid a thick folder across the mahogany table towards them. "Is that what you call falling for each other?" I asked, my voice steady. "Or would you call it grand larceny and wire fraud?" The color drained from their faces as they opened the folder. They saw the bank transfers, the account numbers, the printouts of their secret correspondence. They saw the photo of the cufflink. They saw their entire plan laid bare in black and white. Sarah started to stammer, to deny it, but Mark just sank into his chair, his mask of superiority crumbling into dust. He knew he was caught. In the end, there was no dramatic courtroom showdown. Faced with irrefutable evidence and the prospect of a long prison sentence, they had no choice but to surrender. Mark signed over his entire share of the company to me, along with every penny he'd stolen, plus damages. Sarah, desperate to avoid criminal charges herself, signed a divorce agreement that left her with nothing but the designer clothes on her back. I watched them walk out of that office, not as a power couple, but as two defeated, pathetic thieves. The morning after my anniversary, I had woken up in a cold bed, feeling like my life was over. But standing there, watching them go, I realized it wasn't an ending. It was an excavation. I had finally cleared away the lies and rot to find solid ground again, and for the first time in a very long time, I was ready to build something new, something real, something entirely my own.